Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the Left Side of Liberty, and today we're going to do Mutualist Musings episode 2 because I was pretty happy with the way Mutualist Musings episode 1 went, but I realized I didn't really go too much into uh, actual an actual discussion of what mutualism is. So that is definitely something I'm going to address in this video. But first, I have to say, um, it's good to be back, and damn, there was a lot of things that happened uh, while I was out. Um, you had the coup attempt with Trump and his most ardent supporters, and then you had him kind of egging the people on, and then walking it back, saying, this election is fraudulent. Somebody should do something, but we got to do it peacefully. We got to do it peacefully. Totally, that's totally what I mean. And then he would egg him on again, and then he was like, "But wait, we got to do it peacefully. Totally, totally peacefully." Um, so there was that, and then of course Biden being sworn in, and then doing all these executive orders, which don't really have any teeth, and conservatives are pretending to be outraged over, but they really don't mean anything. These executive orders, like uh, the transgender issue and the trans people in sports and stuff like that. You know, the Keystone XL pipeline is the other one. Um, Again, these executive orders, they just don't really mean a whole lot. It's more symbolic bullshit. So um, there's also, oh, and more recently, there is, the cancel culture stuff. Like, there was the Dr. Seuss controversy, the um, Mr. Potato Head, and stuff like that. Um, just like yesterday or the day before or something like that, there was Pepe Le Pew, and just all the stupid stuff that people are, again, pretending to be outraged over. Um, and it's funny because Ben Shapiro, in particular, I watched a video today where he said, the left is getting mad at conservatives for being outraged over this. Now, of course, when he says the left, he he even said he means, like, CNN is something he specifically cited as an example. He went on to play a clip where somebody from CNN called out conservatives for hyping up the threat of cancel culture and whatever. Um, Now, I've been critical of cancel culture and whatever, but things like Dr. Seuss and stuff like that, and Mr. Potato Head and whatever, that's corporate bullshit. That has nothing to do with cancel culture. Nobody asked for that. Nobody, these are corporations making their own decisions, and in the case of Dr. Seuss, it was his own estate, his own publishing company, making the decision to pull a few of his books, not all of them, a few of his books out of publication, because they have some old timey racist stereotypes in there that they don't want to teach to kids anymore. They just don't want that in there because they think it's in bad taste and whatever. So Ben Shapiro was like, the left is saying that this isn't that cancel culture doesn't exist, and this isn't. It's like, Ben, first of all, calm down. First of all, nobody's saying that cancel culture doesn't exist. I think well, was it Nate Robinson or somebody that was saying that that it doesn't exist or something like that? I think okay, so one person said it like literally doesn't exist, but most people acknowledge that it exists. But people like you, Ben Shapiro, hype it up to get your audience who's already afraid of everything even more afraid, so you can get clicks and eyeballs on your own content. Um, so, but anyway, the point is, uh, he was saying, uh, yeah, the left is saying that this is just a distraction. That's basically, what he's saying, and Ben Shapiro was saying, well, this isn't a distraction. I'm not trying to distract you. It's like, whoa, thou doth protest too much, Ben. If you weren't trying to distract your audience and deflect from the real issues of the day, um, you wouldn't like if you weren't trying to do that. Why do you have to say that you're not trying to do that? It's like again, thou doth protest too much, Benny boy. It's like, so that's the point in me bringing this up is people like Ben Shapiro and Steven Crowder and all those guys, Michael Knowles, who's another Daily Wire guy who's extremely smug and annoying and fake, and even more fake than Ben Shapiro, to be honest with you. Because I think Ben Shapiro is at least a touch genuine. He probably exaggerates a lot of what he believes and says and whatever, and of course he doesn't say anything factual. Despite his facts over feelings thing, he doesn't say anything factual. He's all feelings and all show and all hype. But Michael Knowles is even more full of shit and even more for show. But anyway, so all these guys, and the Fox News people too, all these guys have a vested interest in distracting you from the issues of the day. And Ben Shapiro is right when he says that CNN is hypocritical because they do the exact same thing, distract you from serious issues. So he was right to call CNN out on that hypocrisy. But Ben, you're a hypocrite too. So don't try to weasel your way out of this because you're a hypocrite too. So anyway, all that stuff happened. Well, since the last time I posted a video. So anyway, mutualism. That is a very important concept to me that I want to talk about. In fact, I just reread Mutual Aid, from Peter Kropotkin, and what it is basically is a pretty brief book on basically Peter Kropotkin, who was an anarchist philosopher and intellectual, but he was also a scientist, a naturalist, a very well-rounded and smart guy. He had some flaws, like he had a penchant for anti-Semitism, for instance. So obviously, I don't condone that part of his character. Same thing with Bakunin. Bakunin, who I also respect to a large extent, also had anti-Semitic tendencies. But let's be honest, a lot of people in the 1800s, when these people lived, in early 1900s, a lot of people had anti-Semitic tendencies back then, especially in Eastern Europe, where Bakunin and Kropotkin lived. So I'm not excusing that behavior. I'm just saying it certainly wasn't uncommon given the context of the time and the place in which Bakunin and Kropotkin lived. So anyway, Kropotkin put out this book called Mutual Aid in 1902, which was actually originally a series of essays. And basically, it debunks the common misconception of Darwinian, like a common misconception that people have of sort of Darwinian philosophy of like survival of the fittest as like this struggle of like individualistic survival. And in a way, and he even acknowledges this, in a way, it's somewhat true to an extent, but what he really means, what Darwin really means by survival of the fittest, is one who can cooperate and collaborate the most with other people. That's who really is the fittest. It doesn't always have to be this alpha male that, kills everybody and, can, get all the mates he wants, at an individualistic level. It's somebody who can cooperate and collaborate with as many people as possible and form as many of these advantageous, mutually beneficial relationships as possible. And he goes through examples in the not only in the animal kingdom but also throughout human history as well, to demonstrate like he gives the example of medieval guilds that were able to flourish despite interference with states and kings, that were able to fend off the state, fend off the, various monarchies through collaborating with each other. Now, some weren't, and he acknowledges that, but there were some that were able to fend off monarchies and were able to do that through collaboration, and also had things like land held in common, and had mutual credit stores, and had a system like market socialism essentially in place. So he's kind of debunking this whole socialism doesn't work, and survival of the fittest. But he's kind of like debunking like 2 or 3 myths in this one book. And like as for cooperation in the animal kingdom, he uses the examples of like ants building ant hills and birds building nests, where it's mutually beneficial for these animals to put aside their differences and collaborate. And it's a really, really interesting book. So Peter Kropotkin, he isn't just talking out of his ass. He actually went and studied these animals, and he researched these various societies. He talked about the so-called barbarian societies like the Huns and the ancient Greeks and ancient Romans and things like that. Now, of course, the ancient Greeks and ancient Romans fell eventually because civilizations, what goes up must come down, I suppose. But he studied all these things, and he really put his heart and soul into researching both the historical human side of mutual aid, but also the animal side of mutual aid. And so he's not just some layman. He actually did his homework and put it in this book. So it's a really interesting book, and now I'm currently rereading and brushing up on Conquest of Bread, because I also quickly read that as well. I read both of these books in my free time. when I was in college, but I kind of just like skimmed them and I didn't really take them in. So now that I'm out of college and I have time now, I'm taking a look back at these books by Kropotkin, and I'm really absorbing them now and taking in really taking in their information and looking for things that I didn't catch the first time. So, anyway, what mutualism is, it's essentially, I see it as a sort of third way, if you will, between pure anarcho communism and so called anarcho capitalism, which obviously isn't a thing and can't be a thing because obviously anybody that isn't an ANCAP ideologue knows that capitalism can't exist without a state to sustain it. It just doesn't happen in the way ANCAPs would like to believe that it happens. Capitalism doesn't work without a state. It just doesn't happen. And it's funny. I was watching. Somehow it ended up in my recommended videos section. Thomas Sowell. He's an economist. He's an African American economist, and basically Thomas Sowell is one of these guys that he makes his money because he's black, and he basically makes all his money by saying blacks are lazy, blacks are the problem. He basically makes his money by telling racist white people exactly what they want to hear, kind of like Candace Owens. And it's fitting that Candace Owens cites Thomas Sowell as an influence. So Thomas Sowell, even Thomas Sowell said that capitalism can't exist without some semblance of a state. Now, of course, Thomas Sowell is, a so-called small government guy, but even he admitted that you can't have, like in one of these videos that I watched that was in my recommended feed for some reason, that you can't have a state, or I'm sorry, you can't have capitalism without some sort of a state. So I thought it was actually kind of shocking for him to admit that, but he did. So I guess that will be the one and only time I will ever say that I agree with Thomas Sowell. So thank you, Thomas Sowell, for saying one reasonable thing in your entire life. Thank you. Anyway, so mutualism. Back to mutualism. So again, you could do. There's a lot of different schools of thought even within mutualism, but mutualism generally is you have a market socialist system. So that is you have markets still, but you also have workers maintaining and owning control over the means of production, which you do not have in a capitalist system. Why? Because it's not profitable in most instances to give workers the means of control over production, because in a capitalist system, by definition, the means of production are privatized and they're in the hands of a boss or a board of directors or whatever. So it's it's a different way of having a market system. Well, also being more fair to workers and giving them more say in their own labor and their own lives. Um, so that's market socialism. Um, and there's also, like I said, you can buy goods at mutualist stores. Um, I still haven't quite figured out exactly how currency would work. I I think that you need some sort of uh, medium of exchange. I don't necessarily think a barter system would work. Um, because, well, number one, like I'm not an prim. Like I don't like I honestly don't think we could just go back to a bartering system. It just doesn't seem feasible to me at all. So I'm not sure, and I'm also not sure necessarily about the labor theory of value. I used to be a proponent of the labor theory of value, but I also kind of agree with the subjective theory of value. Because let's face it, all value is essentially subjective. Even the value of your labor is essentially a subjective measure. So um, that value is a really hard thing uh, to determine in general. So I'm not sure, but like I said, for essentials, basic necessities, I would completely take those out of the marketplace, except for like if you wanted to buy, for instance, um, I don't know, just to give an example from life right now. If you wanted to buy something like vitamin water or Powerade or something, I don't know. If you wanted to buy that, fine. You know that's okay. I have no problem with that whatsoever. Um, but as far as just drinking water in general, no, I don't think that should be subject to market prices or forces or whatever. Um, so just normal potable, that's a fancy way of saying drinkable, just normal potable drinkable water. Uh, I'm not okay with subjecting that um, to market prices or market forces. So, but yeah, so uh, a baseline level of drinking water, a baseline level of clothing, shelter, um, healthcare, all that stuff. I want out of the marketplace, and even utilities. I would say take those out of the marketplace as well. Um, Now, how you would go about compensating workers for this, because I actually got into a pretty interesting and kind of heated, not by me. I was not necessarily the heated one in this debate. There was somebody in the mutualist group that I was in where um, it was very, uh, like I said, it was a heated discussion. And this guy was like, well, how would you compensate the utility workers? How would that work? Um, and my response to that is probably something like a Georgist system or what's called geolibertarianism, where you you take you have one, just one tax on land, so on land in your community that everybody pays into, and that can be used to compensate utility workers and maybe even healthcare workers. Um, and so maybe that's an idea. I don't know. But again, for anybody that has a better idea that wants to comment, feel free to leave an idea in the comments for me. I don't know. Like I said, I'm just getting started with learning about mutualism. I'm not an expert. I'm not somebody. First of all, I'm 24 years old. Second of all, I've only been, studying leftist thought now for 3 years. And it hasn't really, and really, I haven't done that deep of a dive into mutualism because I just settled really on like, yeah, mutualism is kind of generally where I fit in. Like I said, not completely, because I do believe in kind of a hybrid sort of ANCOM on basic necessities, but mutualism on like luxury goods and things like that. I do believe in that sort of hybrid system, but I believe mutualism is generally where I fit in, and I kind of settled on that just in the past year or so, definitively. So I've really haven't done much of a deep dive. So I um, I really don't expect me to have a lightning quick answer for every problem, like or every situation that comes up for today's, for instance, economic problems. Like, what's the mutualist answer for this? What's the mutualist answer for that? Because half the time I'm probably not going to have the answer, because I probably won't know the answer myself, because I'm just learning along with you guys. So, anyway, that's the basic rundown of what mutualism is. And I think that it's a much fairer system than what capitalism is. And I apologize for anybody on my end. It's kind of glitching a little bit, but I just wanted to make this video for today. So if the last couple minutes of this are a little bit glitchy, I apologize. So I think I'll end the video right now, because I pretty much ran out of things to say anyway. But anyway, I look forward to hearing what you guys have to say in response, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you.